They say war changes you, but nothing prepares you for how much staying the same will cost you. I spent 9 years patching up broken bodies in the desert sun, dodging bullets, praying over blood-soaked uniforms. Yet the message that finally broke me wasn't shouted in chaos or scribbled in a field journal. It came from my father, at 2:03 a.m., just a week before Christmas. It's not your home anymore. Don't bother coming. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I blinked hard at the message, the glow of my phone washing over my cot in our dim barracks room. Maybe it was meant for someone else. Maybe he was drunk. Or sick. Or no. It was deliberate. Cold. Too sharp to be an accident. I read it again. It's not your home anymore. Don't bother coming. That was it. No punctuation. No greeting. Nothing. It took me a moment to feel it. Not anger, not sadness. Just this hollow bone-deep chill that settled behind my ribs. I hadn't been home for Christmas since I enlisted. 9 years. 3 tours. 1 Purple Heart. A million sleepless nights. And this was what I came back to? I didn't sleep that night. I lay still, listening to the buzz of the ceiling fan and the distant hum of machinery outside the window. My body had learned how to sleep through mortar rounds. But this? This was different. Before we dive in, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. We're excited to connect with all of you, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing content. Now back to the story. The next morning, I checked my messages again. Nothing new from him. But one from my younger brother, Luke. We did what we had to. You always left us, remember? That one hit harder. I sat there in uniform, my boots already laced for morning PT, and stared at the screen until the words blurred. You always left us. That's what they thought? That I left? No. I bled for this country. I shipped half my paychecks home. Every promotion, every sacrifice. I made it count. I missed birthdays and funerals and graduations. I missed the smell of pine trees and cinnamon in the house my mother built with her own hands. I missed holding the people I loved because I was out trying to save strangers. I didn't leave. I served. And now, they've cut me off like I was never part of them to begin with. I didn't tell anyone on base what happened. I packed my things like planned, filed my leave paperwork, and nodded through my commanding officer's tired pep talk about using this time to reconnect with family. Try to make it a peaceful one, Sergeant, he said as I saluted and turned to leave. You've earned it. I smiled politely. I have no family left to reconnect with. But I'm still going home. The flight from Germany to New York was long and silent. I kept my hood up, my headphones in, and my heart locked tight. I replayed every phone call I'd had with Luke in the past 2 years. He always sounded rushed, distracted, but grateful for the money. Dad's getting older, and things are tight, he'd say. Thanks for covering this month's mortgage. I'll pay you back when the shop picks up again. I didn't mind. I believed in helping my family, even when they didn't understand me. Mom would have understood. She was the only one who ever did. She died when I was 16, sudden stroke, kitchen floor, gone before the ambulance arrived. I was the one who found her. My father never recovered. Not really. He hardened overnight, blaming the world, blaming me in small ways. Why wasn't I home earlier? Why didn't I call? Why didn't I stop it? It didn't matter that I was just a kid. He stopped hugging me. Stopped saying my name like it meant anything. Luke got the softness that remained. I got silence, and eventually, I left. Still I kept writing. Calling. Sending money. Because that's what family does, right? My boots crunched against the old gravel drive as I stepped out of the Uber. I stood across the street from the house that raised me, carrying nothing but my duffel and a fragile kind of hope that maybe this was all a misunderstanding. It was the same house. White siding, peeling porch paint, wind chimes still swaying in the December breeze. But something felt off. The yard was clean. Too clean. No sign of Luke's busted truck or Dad's rusted mailbox. The curtains were different. There was a new wreath on the door. I stood there, blinking at the sight, until a woman I'd never seen opened the front door holding a toddler. Can I help you? She called. My throat tightened. I'm sorry. I used to live here. Oh. We just moved in last month, she said, smiling faintly. We bought it from an older man. Said he was moving down south. My stomach dropped. He sold the house. He sold the house without telling me. I turned away before I could answer her. My chest felt tight. I walked half a block before I called Luke. He didn't answer. I tried again. Then my father. Straight to voicemail. I stood outside the town's old mechanic shop next. Luke worked there, or at least he used to. The door was open. Grease and metal and cigarette smoke drifted out. He was inside, hunched over an engine, talking to someone. I walked in and waited for him to notice. When he finally looked up and saw me, his face didn't shift. No smile. No guilt. Just a tired, irritated glance like I was an inconvenience. "Well," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Look who's back." "I want to know why you sold the house," I said, my voice low, trembling from the cold, or maybe fury. He shrugged. "Dad needed out. We couldn't keep up with everything. I was sending money. Every month. Yeah, and it helped for a while. But you weren't here, Amara. You never were." "Don't you dare," I said, stepping closer. "I gave you everything I had. And you still didn't call me when you decided to sell the only thing Mom left us." Luke scoffed, looking away. "Mom left it to all of us. But you walked away." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him, cry, anything, but I didn't. I just looked him in the eye. I didn't walk away. I went to serve. To survive. And while I was patching up dying men and burying friends, you were here, what? Blowing my money on tools and poker nights. "Get over yourself," he said flatly. "You're not the only one who's had a hard life." I turned without another word and walked back into the cold. That night, I sat in a cheap motel on the edge of town, staring at the ceiling with my coat still on. My phone buzzed once more, a final message from my father. "You were always more trouble than help. Let it go." That was the moment something in me snapped, not violently, but clean. Cold. Like frost cracking a branch underfoot. I'd spent my whole life trying to prove I was worth loving to two men who only saw me as a burden. I kept thinking if I gave enough, if I stayed strong enough, I'd earn my place back. But you can't buy your way into a heart that's closed to you. I lay there, hand over my chest, and felt nothing. But then, slowly, methodically, that nothing turned into something else. Resolve. They wanted me gone. Fine. But I wasn't leaving without the truth. They stole what little my mother left behind. They erased me from my own story. They thought I'd stay silent. But this soldier doesn't walk away from unfinished battles. And family? Real family doesn't do this. They wanted war? They just picked the wrong woman to betray. The next morning, frost slicked the windows of the motel like the world itself had frozen solid overnight. I sat on the edge of the bed, my boots still damp from yesterday, staring at the thin line of steam rising from the vending machine coffee in my hand. I hadn't slept. Not even a little. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that wreath on our old front door. Her door. My mother's door. Replaced. Covered over like she had never existed. I didn't recognize the house anymore. And I didn't recognize my family either. I opened the weathered notebook I'd carried through deployments, a battered black spiral filled with names, numbers, past due bills I'd paid for them, screenshots of texts from Luke asking for help. Proof. I hadn't brought it intending to use it for this, but now, every line felt like ammunition. I needed to know everything. All the details. What they did. When. How. And more importantly, why. I drove across town to the courthouse. The clerk looked at me like I'd tracked mud across her linoleum when I asked for the deed history on 48 Parker Street. "You family?" she asked, tapping her long nails against the keyboard. "Used to be," I said, my voice colder than I meant. "The house was in my mother's name before she passed. I want to know when it changed hands." She clicked and clacked and gave me a narrowed look when the file pulled up. "Looks like a quitclaim deed was filed about 6 months ago. Property transferred from Thomas Ellis to Luke Ellis. Then Luke sold it to a family from out of state." Wait. What? My heartbeat spiked. She turned the monitor slightly so I could see. There it was. My father had signed the house over to Luke. No sale. No exchange. Just gave it away. "Can I get a copy of that deed?" She hesitated, but after a glance at my military ID, nodded. "Give me 10 minutes. When she handed me the papers, I scanned them right there in the lobby. My stomach dropped to my knees. The signature on the transfer? It looked like mine. Or rather, it was supposed to. But it wasn't. I never signed anything. Never agreed to release my share of the house. And yet, there it was. My name, scrawled at the bottom of the document, like some twisted afterthought. Forgery. I walked out of that building like the floor had shifted under me. My father didn't just shut me out. He forged my name to erase me. There's something about betrayal that doesn't hit all at once. It creeps. Settles. Rots from the inside. I wasn't just angry. I was gutted. Humiliated. I'd stood in deserts stitching together strangers while my own family tore apart the last thing I had left. I needed answers. Not from Luke. Not through texts. I needed to look the man who raised me in the eye and ask him how he could carve me out of his life like I was a tumor. So I drove. His truck was parked outside Odelius Bar just like it always was back when I was a teenager, waiting in the cold for him to stumble out while Mom covered for him. Back then, I used to pretend he was just sad. That he drank because he missed her. That he was broken, not cruel. Now I knew better. I pushed open the door. The smell of old beer and fried meat clung to the air. My boots echoed on the wood floor as I crossed the room. He was sitting in the back booth. Same brown flannel. Same blank stare. He saw me coming. Didn't move. "You want to tell me why you forged my signature on that deed?" I said, planting my hands on the table. He took a slow sip from his glass. "Didn't think you'd care. You didn't think I'd care about the house I grew up in? The one Mom left to all of us." He set his drink down. "She didn't leave it to you. She left it to the family. You chose not to be part of it." My voice cracked before I could stop it. "I enlisted because I had no choice. You barely looked at me after Mom died. You wanted out. You got out. I sent money. Every month. I called. I wrote letters. I tried. You did your duty. You don't get a medal for being a daughter. Especially when you're never around." My hands curled into fists on the tabletop. "You lied to me. You told me the house was behind on the mortgage. That Luke needed help. I kept it afloat. I saved it." "Yeah," he said quietly. "You saved it. And then we used it." There it was. No remorse. Just calculation. I wasn't a daughter to him. I was a wallet. He looked older now. Weaker. But something in his eyes was still hard and closed. Like nothing I could say would ever crack through the bitterness he'd buried himself in. I leaned closer. "I'm going to prove that signature was forged. I'm going to get the sale investigated. And when they pull the records, they'll see everything. Every lie. Every stolen cent. You can try." He didn't even flinch. "But you think people here care what some army girl has to say about her drunk old man and screw-up brother? This town never had time for you. They still don't." I stood there for a moment. My throat burned. My chest ached in a way that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with rage. "Mom would have been ashamed of you," I said finally. He didn't reply. I turned and walked out before I said something that would have broken me. Outside, the wind bit through my coat. The sky was low and gray, the kind of December day that promised snow but never delivered. I got into the car, gripping the steering wheel like it could hold me together. They thought they could bury me with silence. That I'd go back overseas and forget. That I'd swallow the betrayal like all the others. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't the teenager crying in a bathroom after being ignored at the dinner table. I wasn't the fresh recruit writing hopeful emails to a family that never answered. I was Amara Ellis. Combat medic. Survivor. And now, Avenger. I spent the next few hours gathering receipts. Pulling up wire transfers. Digging through years of digital records. I had thousands in payments. Half the mortgage had been mine. Utility bills I'd paid without question. I even had voice messages from Luke, thanking me for saving our asses again. I called a lawyer. Someone I knew from high school. Ashley Pike. She was 2 years ahead of me, now working in town as an estate attorney. She remembered me. She didn't ask many questions when I told her I needed help. We met the next day. "This is a mess," she said, flipping through the folder I handed her. I know. If that signature's fake, we'll get it tested. But even with fraud, the house has already been sold. I don't want the house back, I said. Not really. Then what do you want? I stared out her office window. The trees were bare. The town looked the same, but I didn't. I didn't belong here anymore. And maybe I never did. I want the truth. I want them to lose everything they took from me. I want people to see who they really are. Ashley closed the folder slowly. Then we'll start with this. Fraud. Financial deception. If your dad used your name to access anything else, we'll find it. I nodded. There's more. There always is. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt since the day my first patient died in my arms. Control. Not over the outcome maybe, but over the fight. They didn't expect me to come back. They didn't expect me to dig. They definitely didn't expect me to fight them on their own turf. But I wasn't here to make amends. I was here to make things right. And by the time I was done, they were going to regret ever making me the villain in my own story. I used to believe that justice came wearing a badge, or maybe draped in a flag. That the good guys got medals and the bad guys got trials. But real justice? The kind that leaves a scar? That kind comes in silence. In paper trails. In the sound of a gavel dropping after months of digging through the filth you never wanted to know existed. I didn't come home to pick a fight with my father or my brother. But they picked one with me the moment they decided to erase me from my own bloodline. And now I wasn't just going to prove they forged my name. I was going to dig up every lie they'd buried and make sure they choked on the dirt. Ashley filed the fraud report the same week I gave her the documents. She looped in a forensic handwriting analyst, someone she'd worked with on a previous estate case. I didn't ask what that cost. Whatever it was, I'd pay it. With interest. She said the process might take weeks. That these things didn't move fast. I know, I told her. I didn't get trained to rush. While she worked the legal angle, I got to work on the rest. First stop was the bank. I walked in with a military haircut and a no-nonsense stare. Banks love veterans when it suits their marketing. That day, I used it like a crowbar. I sat down with a manager. Some balding man named Dennis who stammered a little too much when I said I wanted to review all the joint account activity from the past 5 years. I'm sorry, ma'am, but if the account was closed. It wasn't. My name's still on it. I checked before I walked in. So unless you want a formal complaint to your regional director about hiding fraud from a federal employee, I suggest you pull up the logs. He didn't even argue. Just nodded and clicked. 20 minutes later, I had copies of everything. Transfers. Withdrawals. Loan requests. I even got the teller camera logs. And there it was. July 15th. A withdrawal for $10,000 from an account with my name on it. Done in person, signed by me. Except I was in Ramstein on July 15th, patching up a corporal with half his stomach missing. I called Ashley from the car. They used my name at the bank too, I said. 10 grand. Pulled in cash. That's good, she said. If we can prove a pattern, this goes beyond just property fraud. That's identity theft. They're looking at prison time. Good. I wanted them to rot in the same silence they shoved me into for years. But before that, I needed one more thing. I needed people to know. I wasn't popular in this town. I'd left too young. Spoken too loud. Fought too hard. But my mother? My mother was a saint here. Everyone remembered her. Her pies. Her garden. The way she sang at church without looking at the hymnal. When she died, the whole town cried. Even the ones who'd barely spoken to her. I hadn't played that card yet. But now I would. I went to the church first. The one she loved. I hadn't set foot in that building in a decade. Not since the funeral. But when I walked in, the pastor recognized me instantly. Amara Ellis, he said. Good Lord, look at you. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I handed him a folder. I need to speak to the congregation this Sunday. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. He hesitated. That's not typical. I know. But it's about Mom. About what's been done in her name. That got him. He gave me the slot. 5 minutes. Right before the announcements. I spent the next 2 days writing what I would say, cutting it down, sharpening the edges. I didn't want to rant. I wanted them to feel it, to remember her, to see what my father and brother had turned her legacy into. When Sunday came, I wore my uniform, full dress. I stood at the front of that church like I was addressing a room full of soldiers before a mission. And in a way I was. Most of you knew my mother, I began. Jean Ellis. She sang here every Sunday. She fed half this town when you were sick or mourning. She raised 2 children while working double shifts, and she still found time to grow tomatoes big enough to win ribbons. Soft laughter. A few nods. That familiar warmth spreading through the pews. Good. She died when I was 16. And in her absence, I tried to be everything she was. Strong. Loyal. Honest. I served this country because I believed in honor, and because my father didn't know what to do with a daughter who reminded him of everything he lost. The room grew still. I've been gone 9 years. In that time I sent money home. I paid for the mortgage. I kept the house afloat. I did what any daughter would do, because that's what family means. A pause. My throat tightened. But I kept going. Last month, my father sold the house. Forged my name on the deed. Used my name to pull money from our account. Lied to me. To the banks. To you. Gasps. One older woman dropped her bulletin. I don't say this for pity. I say this because if my mother were alive, she would never have let this happen. She believed in truth. In justice. And in me. I stepped down from the podium. I want you to remember her for who she was. Not the men who used her memory to steal. And I want you to know, I'm not done fighting. I came home for Christmas. And I'm not leaving until the truth is all that's left standing. They didn't applaud. They didn't need to. I saw it in their faces. The shame. The shock. The beginning of doubt. That night, Luke showed up at my motel. He was drunk. Red-eyed. Half-broken. You think you can just ruin us? He shouted from the parking lot. You think dragging us through the mud makes you better? I opened the door, slowly. Come. No, I said. I think it makes me free. He stumbled forward. Dad's been sick. You don't even know. You weren't here. I offered to bring him to Germany. I offered to pay for treatment. He refused. You refused. And now you're angry that I won't let you rob me blind and smile through it. His hands shook. You're making a scene. No, Luke, I said, stepping into the cold. I'm starting one. He lunged forward like he wanted to hit something. Me, the wall, himself, but stopped short. You've changed. No, I said. I finally stopped pretending you hadn't. He left in a rusted car with a busted tail light. Just like always. Running. But me? I stayed. The handwriting analysis came back the following week. Confirmed. The signature was forged. Ashley filed the formal suit. Civil and criminal. We handed the report to the police. The detective asked if I wanted to press charges against my own family. I looked her straight in the eye and said, they stopped being my family when they forged my name. Within days, the bank froze the account. The sale of the house was flagged. And people started talking. The woman who bought our home called me crying. Said she had no idea. Said if it helped, she'd testify about the timeline. It helped. I wasn't naive. I knew this wouldn't fix everything. The house wouldn't come back. My mother wouldn't rise from the dead and wrap me in her arms. But I wasn't doing this for restitution. I was doing it for truth. Because truth doesn't need forgiveness to stand. It just needs to be seen. And now, for the first time in 9 years, they couldn't look away. The town that once ignored me now whispered about me. The soldier who came home. The daughter who wouldn't disappear. The one who fought, not for glory, but for something real. I walked through the grocery store and people stared. Not with pity. Not even with sympathy. With respect. And when the trial date was set, I circled it in red. Not as the day justice would be served, but the day they'd learn. You don't turn your back on the people who would have died for you. Not without consequence. And certainly not without hearing them say, I'm still standing. And I'm not done. Snow had fallen the night before the hearing. Thick, heavy flakes that blanketed the streets like nature itself wanted to smother the noise. Everything was quiet that morning. Too quiet. As if the whole town was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. I didn't wear my uniform to court. I didn't need it anymore. I walked in wearing all black, coat, boots, gloves. No medals, no patches. Just the weight of everything they'd done, stitched invisibly into the seams. The courtroom smelled like old wood and stale coffee. My father sat 2 rows ahead of me with his public defender, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Not weaker, just faded. A man who'd spent so long hiding behind pride and bitterness that, stripped of them, there wasn't much left. Luke didn't look at me once. He sat slouched in the chair, his mouth tight, his eyes bruised with exhaustion. Or maybe guilt. I couldn't tell anymore. When the judge walked in, everyone stood. When I took the witness stand, everyone listened. Ashley stood beside me as I told the story. Not just about the forged signature, or the stolen money, but about the things that didn't show up on paper. I talked about the letters I wrote home from Basic that were never answered. About the time I wired 3 months' pay so Luke wouldn't lose his car. About the Christmas I spent in a field hospital, stitching up boys young enough to be my students back in high school. While my father ignored the call I made at midnight just to hear his voice. I didn't cry. Not once. I didn't come home to punish them, I told the court. I came home to spend Christmas in the only place that ever felt like mine. My mother's house. Her legacy. The one thing she left us. I kept it afloat. I kept them afloat. And they repaid me by cutting me out of it entirely. I paused. Let the silence settle. They didn't just steal money. They stole my name. My place in the family. My mother's memory. And I will not let that go unanswered. Ashley placed the deed copy and the handwriting report into evidence. The bank logs followed. Then the video still from the ATM, Luke, using my card. I could almost hear the courtroom shift, breath by breath. Their defense didn't have much to offer. My father claimed he believed I gave permission. Luke said I told him over the phone it was okay. But there were no calls. No texts. Nothing. Just their word. And that word didn't hold up under cross-examination. The judge ruled in our favor. The deed was deemed invalid, fraudulently executed. The funds withdrawn from my accounts had to be repaid. The sale of the house, though legally binding to the new owners, would result in restitution for my father and brother's portion of the profits. Criminal charges moved forward. Luke took a plea deal, probation, restitution, mandatory counseling. My father didn't. He stood there, lips tight, and took the full sentence. 6 months in county. Maybe less with good behavior. When the gavel dropped, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty. It was over. The courthouse emptied slowly, like people weren't sure if they should look me in the eye. Some did. Some even nodded. One woman squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Your mother would be proud." I wanted to believe her. Outside, snow crunched under my boots. The air stung my lungs with every breath. Luke was waiting near the parking lot, arms crossed, eyes red. "You got what you wanted," he said. Not accusing. Just stating. "No," I said quietly. "I wanted you to do the right thing. You didn't." He nodded like he already knew that. "You were always the strong one." "No," I corrected him. "I was the one who stayed silent the longest." He looked like he wanted to say more, but I turned and walked away before he could. I didn't owe him closure. Later that week, I visited the house one last time. I stood on the sidewalk, looking at the fresh coat of paint, the new car in the driveway. A child's bike leaning against the porch. It didn't feel like mine anymore. And maybe that was okay. I had let the house define my grief for too long. My mother didn't live in those bricks. She lived in me. I mailed the check for Ashley's services with a note that said simply, "Thank you for standing when no one else would." I went back to the motel and packed my bags. 1 duffel. 1 carry-on. Before I left town, I stopped by the cemetery. I brushed the snow from my mother's headstone and knelt beside it. "I thought I was coming home for Christmas," I whispered. "But I came home for you. To protect what you left behind. To remind them you mattered. And that I do too." I sat there until the cold burned through my coat. Until the ache in my chest softened into something warmer. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But freedom. As I drove out of town, the snow kept falling. Quiet, steady, relentless. Just like me. They thought they could write me out. That silence and distance would erase me. But I came back. And I wrote myself in. Not for them. For me. For every woman who was told her voice was too loud. For every daughter who paid the bills and got forgotten in the family photos. For every soldier who came home to find the war hadn't ended. It had just changed shape. This time, I didn't lose. This time they learned. You don't leave someone behind. And expect them not to come back stronger.